Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. We've haven't been coupled up in a while, Thomas, to deliver some reports. We've been very busy on the theft of social media and all that entails, but now we need to get back to some of the events that are going on in the world today and get your insight. And one of the ones that intrigues me, as I see a lot of headlines about Trump getting a private intelligence agency to help him sort through everything. I find that these are disinformation or misleading headlines, and what I'd really like to know, Thomas, is what you have to say about that. Where is Trump getting his intelligence?
Oh, Betsy, I'm glad to be back and having a chat with you about current affairs and news, which you stay at the cutting edge of, and you keep asking this question, and I keep laughing, and Conclave keeps laughing, because if you ask, where does Trump get his intel? That is a beautiful story. And we can highlight that by going down a list of different ways that he gets that intel and what he does with it. Let's go back to the beginning. As soon as he ran for president, he hired Kroll. Kroll is the number one honest intelligence agency used by everyone on Wall Street or New York in the financial world. So Trump was already a shark. He was a real estate shark. His dad was a real estate shark, and they were New York real estate sharks. It doesn't get any more cutting edge than that. So to begin with, his intel comes from his astoundingly refined and sharpened ability to create deals. Well, when you do a deal, you put the other side through a few changes. You do that on purpose. I mean, you're not doing the deal because they're your best friend. You're doing the deal to make money. So what does he always do? He's a wrecking ball. He shakes it all up. He stirs it up. He throws a monkey wrench in. And half of the intel that he gets is simply watching the reactions of people to him. But the real question would come as, where does he get the idea to tweet to begin with? And that's what I think you're asking. So first off, I'm going to say credit to you. We know that you and others like you, news sites, are read by the insiders in the White House. There's lots of confirmations of that from many directions. So we know that is a fact. And so we know that there's someone there in the White House who goes through alternative media and looks for facts, indictable facts, or predictions. Predictions, whether it be, a Cliff High with his, what does he call that?
Predictive linguistics.
Which is a way of analyzing the internet flow to see what people are talking about, what's on their mind. So Trump, during the election, not only used Kroll, first off, to make sure that he had nothing bad in his background. Do you think Trump ran for president without doing a complete, thorough investigation on himself? You'd have to be crazy to think that. So anyway, he used the standard honest intelligence agencies, and he used the best for the kind of thing that Cliff High does, which is analyze what people want. Why? Because Trump is an expert in media. He said that he could start a show that would become the number one show on all the networks, and he did. He predicted he could do that before he did it. So this is a guy who knows how to read the response, the feedback that's coming to him, and he uses Cambridge Analytica during the election, the very number one best intelligence company in the world. And so that's part of where he gets it.
Well, he is like the CEO of our country now, and we're all the shareholders. And of course, there are certain things that we as shareholders want to see our company grow and thrive. And he's an expert CEO that's going to listen to his shareholders and move us forward.
And like in all of his business, he had successes and he had failures. And he learned from the failures and always kept moving forward. He said that he came to be a businessman in the White House to help America win, because basically idiots are in Washington, D.C., a bunch of corrupt politicians who are all career politicians, many of whom have never had a job other than politics, never employed anyone, and have no idea how to do anything that they are elected to do. So Trump knows what he's doing. He's doing deals for America.
Well, why are they pushing out all these headlines lately that Trump is looking for a private intel group to help him?
In that same pack of lies, I just read an article yesterday that packed 4 or 5 of those lies all into one place. That's complete nonsense, and that he'd use Eric Schmidt as...
No, not Eric Schmidt, Prince.
Eric Prince and Blackwater, which is now Z, which also, or KBR, Halliburton's KBR, anybody as these mercenaries that were used in Iraq. Remember, we had as many mercenaries being paid directly to Halliburton through KBR, and Halliburton had all the contracts, no bid contracts, many violations, but it was also Blackwater that sent in many, many, many mercenaries. And then later they changed their name, and they've changed it again to, I think, Academia or something. They change it every year or two so that they don't realize that you're talking about ruthless murderers. So when you talk about Eric Prince, he recently said that they were surveilling him when he was talking with a Russian in a foreign country, and he's mad about it. And that's the guy that Trump is going to do a deal with to create a new intelligence agency? Complete nonsense. Here's what's going on. Trump, from the beginning, said, even once he was the president, I don't need your intelligence, 17 intelligence agencies, because you're fake intelligence. I have my own intelligence. Those are his words. And then when they tried to give him a report again and again, he said, no. And he hesitated. He rescheduled until the fourth rescheduling. He knew that none of his people were going to even know he was in this meeting with these four intelligence heads: Comey, Clapper, Brennan, and Rogers. The FBI, the Director of National Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and the NSA. And he called them together, and he had a talk with them, and literally 45 minutes after the talk, it was leaked to the press. So one of them was a leaker. So he knew that their intelligence was bad. Plus, he read their report. Their report had come out early. They do a 5-year projection of the 17 intelligence agencies working under the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. At that time, it was James Clapper. And they do a study, which is a recommendation basically to the president and to the White House on what the next 5 years are going to look like and what they've learned in the past 5 years. And I say this again and again, folks, go read Paradox of Progress. You will be shocked. I've been wanting to do an abbreviation of it for a long time because I've quoted it many times. What they were doing was all laid out years in advance for Hillary. What Hillary was going to do when she became president was laid out for the next 5 years in that program, in that intelligence report. So Trump knew what was in that intelligence report, and as I've said again and again, in that report, it said that the left, liberal, progressive Democrats will win unless a strong nationalist comes out who's anti-globalist and stands strongly against Islamic fascism, terrorism. And that's what Trump did. Well, of course, he took his cue from that report. So Trump, of course, read the Paradox of Progress. It was already out, and it was public, especially to anybody Kroll or anybody else who was keeping their ear to the ground. And Hillary, her entire game plan was there. But it also said, if the liberal left Democratic wing does not go so far left that they literally become socialists, they have a chance of losing. So Bernie read the report, because he had it, and he came out as a socialist, and he knew that he could actually win as a socialist. So that's the reason Bernie jumped in the most unlikely and insane bid for presidency that I've ever seen, a socialist running for president under a Democratic ticket. That doesn't even make any sense. He should be in his own party as an independent. Why did he do that? He was following the intelligence of the intelligence community.
I have a lot of other questions I want to ask you, Thomas. Is there anything more that we want to say about where Trump is receiving his intelligence?
Yes, Trump doesn't trust anybody. He doesn't trust Jared. He doesn't trust Ivanka. He doesn't trust anybody. I want to make that perfectly clear, and that's what he always makes clear.
Well,
he
wait
is
a minute.
the boss.
I know you said that like he doesn't trust Ivanka. You have to categorize that perhaps in ways of these political machinations. All right, he loves his daughter, Thomas.
All the more reason that he wouldn't know her for exactly who she is. What human being is really worth your trust when it comes down to the security of the globe, the security of the United States? Trump isn't trusting anyone. He isn't trusting Kelly. He isn't certainly trusting McMaster's. He didn't trust Dina Powell. He didn't trust Reince Priebus. He didn't trust Paul Manafort. He didn't trust General Flynn. You must be kidding. These people clearly made their biases and their limitations perfectly clear to him. He knows what he's dealing with. He's a contender. He's one man in the boxing ring tweeting people with his boxing tweet gloves. And he knows that he's going against the whole world. And he has to fall back to his own intelligence. Now, we supply him with plans and tons of indictable information to go after the people that he can go after. But you have to remember, he has to be responsive to what is the general information that is being received by the over 65% of Americans who support him. So he has to go with that. He knows what the alternative media is saying. He has entire groups of people who are analyzing that for him. He doesn't have to just attempt to listen to Alex Jones all day, or Michael Savage, or Rush Limbaugh, or go to Drudge or Breitbart. You must be friggin' kidding. If you and I, Betsy, can sit here and we can make predictions. By the way, none of our predictions have ever been wrong. Well, because they're based on logic. They're not based upon insider information.
What do you call it when it's not a prediction, but it's really based on... You're looking at a trajectory based on fact. Here are the facts. This is who the cabal is. These are who the players are. This is how they're involved and intertwined with all these different companies. So then, as you know that, you can begin to watch what the next play is out in the terrain. And then you gather that information and you arrange it in a way that shows you the intelligence of the environment.
Peter Strvok, whatever his name is Comey's boy. Comey didn't do anything on the email scandal because he needed to be clean so that when he made his pronouncement for the Department of Justice illegally because of the absolute biased involvement of Loretta Lynch on the tarmac with Bill Clinton and everything else, downgrading it to... What did she call it? A matter. A matter. It's a matter. Oh, the largest espionage breach in U.S. history, Hillary's email server, and then later her DNC server, is a matter for Loretta Lynch. So that's a cover-up. And Peter worked, of course, directly with Comey, and every time Comey needed somebody to go and interview somebody to say it wasn't his fault, he sent him. And Peter wrote Comey's report. Let's remember that. He went in and adjusted the report. Comey wrote it without any information, without any of the people who were interviewed, any of that information ever receiving him. He said he only read the handwritten notes, field notes, after he had made his determination. That's what Comey said in his testimony.
Well, you see, it's these bureaucrats, they're people, and the people have to make individual decisions, and people within the bureaucracy can be the actual bottleneck for us getting to truth. And it's just a matter of time and pressure that we find these bottlenecks, and Peter is obviously one, sort of like a Forrest Gump character. He is always at the right place at the right time to protect Hillary. We could talk about this for the length of the video, but we have some other pressing questions, and I want to ask you now, if you're finished. Are you finished?
Well, you know, I'm never finished, because to frame these things in this age of falsehood, and what they call in the Progressive Report, they call it the age of political falsehood. And, they come up with amazing names to basically say, if you aren't lying, you're not going to win. All the fake reports you read out there, how do we figure out what the truth is? That might be what people are asking. How does Trump figure out what the truth is? It's real simple. Let me give you a little analogy. I know people who are psychic readers who go read with the richest people in the world, and they usually hire 10 at once, and then after an hour they get rid of half of the ones who aren't accurate, and then after another hour they get rid of the half, and then another hour they get rid of half. And the people at the end are the richest, who only get a reading from people who have been the most accurate. So if you want to simply understand how to know what is correct truth intelligence for you, where you get your intel, and how you get through the age of falsehood politics, who is correct in their predictions? Who is using deductive Sherlock Holmes logic correctly and being accurate? We use an entire conclave before we make statements, okay? Unless I say that it is my personal Thomas Paine, the global assassin, opinion. And when that happens, I say that. And sometimes I have gone against the conclave and made predictions. But by the way, we've made no false predictions. Okay. And I can make some here today because our intel is based upon logic.
Okay, we could fill the air with all these words. Right. I want to get down to Jerusalem. We have folks that want to know what's going on with the move of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. What does it matter to them? Give us the lowdown, Thomas.
Okay.
As he takes a big breath.
People are not going to like what I have to say, but this is the intel. Trump said, okay, lay out the picture for me. And they said, in 1999, 90% of Congress voted to move the capital of Israel to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. Why, for 18 years, has it not happened? So when they went to Trump and said, blah, 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 we want to do peace talks, everybody with two neurons to be connected in their brain with one synapse knows that the issue, they won't sit down at the table because if there's going to be a two-state solution, if there's going to be Israel and Palestine existing in a peace conference, it's not going to happen, folks. They both have sworn to kill each other to the man, till the last man is standing. And they're both Semites. Arabs and Hebrews are of the same exact bloodstock. But they have a death commitment. And that's the reason, whether you call it Palestinian Liberation Organization or the Palestinian Authority, it's Hamas, it's Hezbollah, funded by Iran, funded by particularly the Shiites in Palestine. And I'm not saying that Palestine is wrong or right. I'm not saying Israel is wrong or right. I'm saying that they aren't going to get a solution. And here's what Trump did. He says, okay, since 1999, it's been the friggin' law. What do I always tell you imbeciles who come to speak to me? Rule of law. Read my lips. I don't need your 17 intelligence agencies, your Department of Defense, your Department of State that Hillary ruined to tell me what to do. I sent Jared. He went with a clear message. Two-state solution, period. When they said no, and they said, you see, Jared failed. Well, everyone's going to fail. Then Trump said, I'm going to do what I did in Saudi Arabia. If you want to do business with me, you got to follow the law. If you're a Muslim and you have Muslim terrorists in your country and you are not eradicating them, I ain't doing no business with you. He didn't say ain't, but that's the long and the short of it. He says the same thing to the Palestinians and to the Israelis. Yes, of course he supports Israel for reasons we're not going to go into. He does not support Zionism, especially all the many different forms of it. And he doesn't support the Greater Israel intent of taking over most of the Middle East, the Greater Israel Project. Now, some people in the Israeli government believe that, some don't, and so Trump is always having to play both sides of the coin. He moved our embassy to Jerusalem, where they love to lob bombs from the Palestinian areas into Israel. Well, now they're going to be lobbing them at the U.S. embassy. And also, it's going to start a war. But the war was already started, folks. Israel bombed Syria just days ago. You don't hear a word about it in the press, do you? Israel has already threatened to bomb Lebanon because they say Hezbollah has taken over Lebanon. No, wrong. Lebanon is now ready to drill for oil, the same oil that Israel claims and is actively drilling. So they're going to go to war with Lebanon. They've already stole Golan Heights from Syria, and the same normal culprits, the Rothschilds, Halliburton, Cheney, and a few other, I think, a couple other big names who I won't say. But this is the war that's going on. It's the same old standard war. Do you think Trump doesn't know this? The American public doesn't know this. Most of America doesn't know it, and many of the people in the swamp don't know it. They're too busy being predators, sexual predators. They're too busy making sure they get their money for their next election round and trying to get a position on a committee so that they won't be kicked off, even like a John Conyers, the biggest criminal perhaps for decades in the Congress. And who supported him the other day? The second biggest criminal, Gregory Meeks, who now, oh yeah, that's right, now there's charges against Gregory Meeks. Why? Because this was standard operating procedure, folks. This is the way it works there. They're too busy about their own selves. When you talk about the deep state, don't think for 1 second that there's an intelligence group that tells one person what the deep state is going to do. No, they're all working at odds with each other for their own greedy purposes. So when you talk about what happened in Israel recently, we are now going to see open warfare, as we see in the D.C. swamp, as we see in the Mueller investigation, as we see in China, as we see in North Korea, as we see in Iran, as we see in Saudi Arabia, we're going to see open warfare, not against America, about the factions fighting inside of those countries. When you're talking about North Korea, you're talking about China. Okay? You have to keep things in perspective. When you're talking about South Korea, you're talking about Taiwan. When you're talking about Iran, you're talking about Qatar. And if you don't know this, you don't have the intelligence to actually make an opinion about what you hear in the news. Here's what I recommend. Read Trump's tweets. So far, none of them have been wrong, just like us. Isn't that funny?
Well, it's the first thing I check in the morning before I put together Truth News headlines, and we do have his tweet. If you're not a tweeter, we do have a link at the bottom of Truth News headlines because he's leading the stories of the day.
And if you follow what the story truly is with truth, you arrive at the same place he does.
Yes.
So it sounds like we are ahead of Trump. People are always saying, you just said that.
Right.
And Trump just now tweeted that. How did you know that?
Right.
And you want to talk about Q? Okay, 90% of what Q is saying is ambiguous or incorrect. 10% is correct. Who's got the time? I want, and I'm sure that Trump wants, to go wherever he can go so that the information he gets is accurate. Over and over and over again. He doesn't go to somebody who says that this time they have a secret insider who tells them the truth. Who says the insider knows the truth? What is the truth? The truth is what becomes fact in reality. So what we like to quote is fact in reality, and we like to follow the intel of the biography of the people involved because there's no deep state. There are a whole bunch of people acting as deep state agents independently. Okay, let's remember, the trilateralists went nuts when he got elected, when Trump got elected. The Council on Foreign Relations doesn't know what to do. They're banging their head against the wall. The Bilderbergers don't know what to do. They've had extra meetings and they say they don't know what to do. On and on and on. The Bohemian Grove doesn't even meet because they're afraid they're going to get caught in their human sacrifice rituals that they're doing there, which are, of course, reenactments of human sacrifice. But still, why are they doing human sacrifice rituals in the Bohemian Grove? Because the rule of law has come to the White House. And that's what Trump always falls back to. His number one thing is to say, well, I guess nobody knows the rule of law and knows that Obama broke these laws. So I now have the option to either maintain breaking the law or I can obey the law. Almost everything he has done has simply been to obey the laws.
And then on top of it, he is now even more empowered because the House rejected this Trump impeachment resolution that Representative Al Green put forth. And hey, he's the man. Let's take it forward.
I will make a prediction that if the true list of names that paid the how many millions to the compliance committee, or which handles the sexual predator complaints in the Congress, was it 12 million or
I don't know. Thomas,
17 million? Yeah. I think it was 12 million. So that 12 million, when they come out with the list, the 58 people who voted for Trump's impeachment in Congress, I will bet one nickel right now that half of them are on that list. They're fighting for their lives, and now they had to come out and make a stupid vote for an impeachment of a president based upon nothing but the sentiment of the idiot who put forth the premature impeachment. Okay, here's what that did, and we predicted this, and we said that if Mueller does not close his investigation immediately...
Yeah, I want you to go into this, because you were quite... you had a lot to say about Mueller, and then we'll wrap this one up.
This has to do with impeachment. He was supposed to come out and say, any prosecutor in their right mind would see that there is collusion, there is corruption, there is conflict of interest, there is anything else I can think of, the Logan Act, anything else we can think of, guys? Trump did all that we think, but we don't really know. That's what he was supposed to come out with, and we predicted that he would get Manafort for tax evasion. We even predicted through what company and through what lobbying he did. We also predicted that because of the stupid indictments on Rick Gates and Paul Manafort, that it won't hold because they're, half of them or a bunch. The first ones are conspiracy indictments, and the other ones, Paul Manafort is no fool. He put 3 presidents in power in the White House with political campaign corruption funding, and you don't think he can cover himself for tax evasion? Plus, remember, Andrew Weissman, who's on that committee, has now been charged by people in Congress of being biased because he came out shortly after Sally Yates said she was going to stand against the president and refused to obey his orders in terms of immigration law, and he had to fire her. Andrew Weissman, who is the person they brought into the case, Mueller brought into the case at the end because he had all the dirt on Paul Manafort. He'd been trying since 2004 to get Paul Manafort. And they still don't have a case on Paul Manafort, and he's corrupt. And now they find out that other lawyers represented Hillary, that other lawyers represented Hillary's friends, that almost all of them are Democrats, almost all of them they gave to Hillary, and so many of them have conflict of interest. It is absurd. They're from WilmerHale, the very law firm that represents Paul Manafort. They were Paul Manafort's friends. So I believe, as I told everyone from the beginning, that Paul Manafort, and he already planned exactly what would happen, and that Paul Manafort will not go to jail, that Comey will be exonerated, that all the evidence will be swept up by the Mueller team, completely swept up and hidden. And now we predict, because Mueller went too far, on August 15th, go back to our tapes and you will see that I predicted at that time myself, Thomas Paine, without the conclave, that the Phoenix Firebird of Donald Trump loves the fire, and that we are in a second American Revolution, and that nothing is going to stop him, and that everyone around him may fall, but he's not going to fall, and he will be reelected for a second term. Not only that, he has nothing to hurry about. He is doing the deal, and the deal is call your opponent out with spin and see how they react. Give them a really high, what do they call it? Low ball them. Give them a deal that's so bad that you see if they walk from the table. And then what do you find out? Who they really are. And you find out if your intelligence was correct, if your intel reports were correct. So that's what he's doing with everybody. And so he knows that this is really, if we predicted that if Robert Mueller, I like to call him Bobby Muleface, if he doesn't end this immediately, Bobby, listen to us.
We got to go into Uranium One if he keeps staying there.
Oh, we have to go into he covered up 9/11. We have to go into the Patriot Act, the U.S. Freedom Act. We have to go to
this.
Mark Rich exoneration, a pardon
Thomas?
from. Oh, please don't get me started on. I said that Comey would call his big brother, his mentor, Bob Mueller, in to help him when he perjured himself repeatedly before the Congress. I said, no. John Barnwell said he was doing that so he could have a plea bargain to a lower plea. Comey isn't even going to have to plea because he became probably protected by becoming a friend of Mueller during the investigation by turning state's evidence. But remember, Peter Strvok is also a key witness. That's the reason they didn't fire Peter Strvok and they just moved him to the HR department, because if they fired him, the whole case has to go out the window because one of their star witnesses has now been proven to be more than biased, illegal, and he was also compromised. And by the way, he had Peter Strvok had a top secret security clearance, exactly as Comey did, and they defiled those security clearances, especially Peter Strvok when he had sex with Jill Page. He was then compromised. This is also the man who interviewed Weiner, who interviewed Huma, Cheryl Mills, who interviewed Flynn, who interviewed Hillary in the email scandal, told them to smash their computers, he confiscated all the evidence. We don't know where it is.
These are criminal activities.
He is worse than a criminal.
Criminal.
Why? I'll tell you why. And I said this,
jail.
He needs to go to jail. I said this from the beginning. Peter Strvok was Comey's man with all of those deals that were the October surprises to try to get Trump knocked out. So Peter Strvok managed the dossier. Peter Strvok managed Felix Sater. Peter Strvok managed Franklin Furor. Peter Strvok managed the October surprises, and he managed the 17 U.S. intelligence agencies report, which came out about Russian meddling, which was nothing more than a previous report doctored up with a couple extra paragraphs which said that they believed 100% what CrowdStrike said about the DNC server, the Democratic National Committee server, which supposedly proved Russian meddling, which is a complete lie. We've demonstrated that with facts. So it's the same guy.
And
it's the same guy with Flynn. It's the same guy with everybody. They send in their stooges because he's counterintelligence. FBI counterintelligence are liars. Everything they do is a lie. And so he is the key liar for all of these things. We will also find him in uranium, one, because he would have worked with Rod Rosenstein.
But we're also going to find out the other bureaucrats just like him in the Department of Justice, in the State Department, in the Consumer
Financial Protection Board.
Yes, there we go. Thank you so much.
Yes.
We're going to find that in all these bureaucracies, there are people, actual people, making criminal decisions and acting in a criminal manner. And when we patriots identify you, like we have Peter, you're on our target and we're going to take you down. And all your investigation that you did, it's no good because now you're seen with what you are.
And mark my words, Peter Strvok would have been also involved in the Clinton Foundation investigations because they would have been outside of this country, and for the FBI to investigate them, they needed the counterintelligence department. And they don't answer to anybody, not even the president. And that's the reason why when Comey kept being asked by President Trump, is there an investigation? 3 times he wouldn't answer because there was a counterintelligence investigation based on the dossier. We, and we alone, have said that all along, back since in January or even December, when we were looking at the WikiLeaks and saw exactly what was going on and put 2 plus 2 together, and we've even named who created the dossier and the whole thing. This is all FBI corruption working with the Department of Justice, hand in glove, back and forth. Andrew McCabe, Rod Rosenstein, these are criminals. Peter Strvok was their axeman. He was their bagman. And he was always sent in when then they could say what? Counterintelligence, sorry, we've gagged the witness, he can't speak to anybody, national security. Because it's counterintelligence. The second that they involve counterintelligence, and I said this from the beginning, there was a second report, but Peter Strvok was also involved in the first intelligence community report, which I hope all of you have read because there's nothing in it except it says Russia Today and Sputnik meddled in the election for the Russians. That's all it says. And then a stupid statement about CrowdStrike.
Well, when are we going to see that NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, and all the others also meddled in the elections?
They all need to
go down. Are
they
foreign agents?
Yes, they are.
They are.
The Associated Press is CIA. We're looking at full-on corruption in the Department of Justice and CIA. They all need to be cleaned out. And you can hear Judicial Watch saying this every day. It's almost every day that more and more people are having to answer to the rule of law, whether it be Harvey Weinstein and his RICO charges now, and the how many is it now? 90 in Hollywood. How many news agency sexual predators? Look, folks, those are assaults. There doesn't need to be an investigation. That's the reason the people step down, because the law is, if you're in a federal or a state agency and you have those charges brought against you, you are relieved of duty until the investigation's over, period. There is no question here. Congressmen, senators, doesn't matter, same law, and that's the reason Al Franken is going to have to step down. That's the reason that Conyers has to step down. It's the reason that all the people on the list who had to pay out the $12 million, whether they were charged with it or not, the allegations were brought. They need to step down until investigation is over.
I'm a taxpayer. I paid for that. I want to see the list.
We have to see the list. And also
I have
remember,
a right to see the list.
We have to remember Gregory Meeks used his own personal slush fund, as many of them do, to simply pay off people. In other words, these congressmen are paying more for their predatory sex than they used to pay the call girls of Washington, D.C., until the call girls of Washington, D.C. started turning them all in because they had their black books with their names in it. And also remember, there are over 200 people in the Secretary of State office who've already been charged with child pornography because CIA dark web sting on them. And they're holding that against them. And that's the reason that you still have State Department, Justice Department, FBI, CIA, anybody except the military. Any corporate private person probably has some dirt on them. And this is the way that it is. It's the way it's been for a long time because it was the complete rampant rule of lawlessness that goes back to Daddy Bush and the White House being the perfect example. I mean, pay to play, do we need a better example than Hillary Clinton? Than pay to play, we now find out Chelsea has been making unbelievable amounts of money in a corporation, AIC, that we've now recently exposed. And it just shows how deep the corruption is and how hard they have to fight. So when you say, where does Trump get his intelligence? First off, he's a businessman. He's the art of the deal. Second off, he don't trust nobody. Third off, he hires private agencies. First off, he listens to alternative news, which he already said he did. And that's been that was a very big deal even during the election. So first off, he listens to people citizen journalists who are out there doing the research, finding the truth and finding indictable information like Americans for Innovation, like Truth News Headlines, like the American Intelligence Media, and numerous others.
Americans for Innovation. But
so those are where the real intelligence, indictable information can be found. If you have not found the indictable information to put all these people in jail, go there. And now we're seeing the crumbling of these bureaucrats who are career politicians, many of them not appointed, not elected. They simply got there by chance, and they're staying and they're defending their positions like a Sally Yates who stands up against the president himself. And no one seems to think anything about it. Really, Robert Mueller is standing up in insurrection against the duly elected president doing this nonsense he's doing. So it doesn't matter. He knew what was going to happen. Trump knew what was going to happen from the beginning. We predicted it. And if Mueller does not end this investigation by January 31st, Mueller will more than likely go down himself.